All right. Dune.
That Dune. Oh, man.
Dune was a movie. We saw this together.
We did?
Was that in...
I think it was in IMAX, wasn't it? At Penn Cinema?
Yes. Yep. When was that? November?
So it came out October 22. I want to say we saw it.
We saw it
opening weekend.
Night.
Yeah.
We saw it the opening night that Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I drove out there.
I think it was
a Thursday night. I slept at your place and then went to work on 3 hours of sleep.
That's right. I remember that now. Yep. So just a tiny bit of background, written by John Spates, Denis Villeneuve, and Eric Roth, and based on a novel, of course, by Frank Herbert, and directed by Denis Villeneuve. People recognize his work like Blade Runner 2049, Arrival, Prisoner, Sicario. And this is, we should preface this as people found out, this is a part one, just a part one movie of part two. It grossed $401.8 million on a $165 million budget. So it didn't actually, that honestly just barely beats breaking even, honestly.
Wait, how much did you say?
It grossed $401.8 million on a $165 million budget.
Is that domestic or is that worldwide?
That's worldwide.
Holy crap.
Yeah, that's not a lot of money. That's not a lot. I mean, that's less than $500 million.
Yeah.
And the whole thing with part two wasn't even going to be greenlit until they saw how this did box office wise for part one, and they were pleased enough with that to greenlight part two, which is good because it would have been awkward to just have a part one and that's it, you know. It was nominated for 10 Oscars, including Best Picture. It won 6, mainly for the technical categories like Best Visual Effects, Cinematography, Production Design, and Best Score for Hans Zimmer, all of which I think were deserved.
Yes.
Yeah. And I also have a written review of this, which any listeners that are interested, you can go to anthony-watkins.com/Dune. I wrote a written review for this basically a couple days after I saw it that weekend. My initial consensus from the movie was the film's visual splendor, coupled with a strong cast and performances, incredible production design, an immersive world, and an intriguing story dealing with destiny, purpose, and political wars, all leads to yet another great film from Villeneuve. But I remember at the end of this movie, I looked over at you and I'm pretty sure you gave me a thumbs down. The first reaction was a thumbs down to this movie. Would you mind explaining yourself there?
Well, I haven't been a Dune fan for long. My brother-in-law has been trying to get me to read the book for years. I've seen the 1984, I want to say, movie.
Okay. David Lynch.
Saw that movie. I've seen the Sci-Fi Channel movie of the same title. It's one of these films and books that's so iconic amongst sci-fi that, you know, the desert planet becoming a common thing. You know, you see it in Star Wars, you see it in Stargate. You know, it's often repeated. A lot of the themes and things that happen in this, even the sandworm part is repeated in Star Wars. But it just didn't have the stuff that I wanted in the movie. And I don't think I'll ever be satisfied with a Dune movie because there's so much complexity in the story and so much stuff that goes on that I think it would be better off if someone Games of Throned it, where they made it a TV show that lasted multiple seasons, because honestly, the first book takes place over like 4 years of time. So you could very easily not stretch it, but very easily have the first book be more than one season of a TV show. Very easily. Not to mention that there's at least 2 more books afterwards that you could go directly into. I don't think it'd be smart to try and do all of the books, because book 4, which I've been struggling with, takes place like 3,000 years later. And yes, some of the characters are still alive, but most of them aren't anymore. And it becomes a very different thing at that point. in my opinion. So yeah, for me, it was the fact that it didn't have any of the major scenes that I wanted in it. There's this dinner scene that I wanted in
Yep.
it.
No dinner scene.
They didn't have, and you know what? I watched it again in preparation for the show, and I appreciate it for what it is, but I feel like it would have done better if they would have had, like, they weren't suspecting a traitor at all in the movie. Like, if they had that as a theme where you're sitting there going, wait, who's the traitor? Who's the traitor? Trying to figure out which of these characters is the traitor, that could have been something, because in the book, you're suspecting, well, no, you're not really suspecting. You're told right away who the traitor is, but all the characters are suspecting each other and treating each other as if they don't trust them, Jessica, the mother and concubine, is really come hard against. People are really coming against her as if she is definitely the traitor. And there's other things revealed about her that make you go, wait, maybe she would be the traitor. When, Gurney attacks Paul at the very beginning of the movie, Paul's like, wait, is Gurney the traitor? That's literally a thought that he has when Gurney comes so hard against him and attacks him because of him being lazy and letting down his guard. The fact that Paul had that thought in the book, and we just have no feeling that this is going to happen, So when someone finally does betray him, it just doesn't hit. It didn't have that impact. I feel like if I wasn't as informed on the book, I feel like I'd be lost in this movie as to what was actually going on, which, we did have some people who hadn't read the book there. And
they still liked it.
They still liked it. Yeah. So, for me, it's a lot of the fact of the stuff that's missing and also the way they interpret certain elements. They did this in the 84 movie too, where, what was it? The Harkonnen Baron has suspenders and there are these things that help him move, but instead they make him fly in the movies. They don't make him fly in the books. They actually make him look goofy and kind of weak because he kind of like hops along because he's so fat that he can't support his own weight. And that's why he has these suspenders on that make him like a little bouncy and stuff in the way that he walks, because there are these technology that's pushing him off the ground. He's like moonwalking and he looks ridiculous as a person, but they kind of make it more of a flying, intimidating thing. The casting was spot on for this. The way they represented Paul's prescience, which is his ability to see into the future, was perfect because they had these visions in the movie where they don't come true, Like they have a vision of Chaney stabbing him and killing him pretty early on. They have a vision of Jameis being like his best friend and helping him and teaching him the ways of the desert and stuff like that, So they show you that it's none of this stuff is guaranteed. Like he sees all these different paths that could happen in the future, but they're not necessarily reliable, so I thought that representation of his visions were good. Duncan, Idaho, I think Jason Momoa knocked that role out of the park. I thought he was a perfect actor for that. I know some people hated the casting, but I thought it was spot on. I also liked the way they represented him in the fight. Spoiler alert, as always, spoiler zone.
Right.
In the fight where he does die, I thought that was perfect because he kept getting back up. You kept thinking he was dead and done, and he kept getting back up. And major spoiler alert for the books and way deeper than the movies are ever going to go. Because he kept fighting like that, the Sardaukar actually take his body and take him to some other people who revive him and bring him back. So because they respected the way he fought. So it ends up being a very interesting thing for later stories. But yeah, so I love the way they did that with him. What else? I just felt like when they were betrayed, it didn't hit. You had no idea what was going on. We were more like a character in the movie than someone watching the movie. You know, we weren't like, I don't know. I just felt like they could have done more with the story. But like I said, I don't think I'll be satisfied.
Yeah, and there were some concepts like the whole Bene Gesserit and their superhuman powers and the whole breeding program. Like that's explained pretty well in the book, but in the movie, you don't really get anything as far as okay, how does this work? How do they have powers?
The thing. Like
it's like
they didn't do it. They didn't write. Yeah. They like the powers part, maybe not, but the way they talked with surety about. They didn't have the line of like nothing for the father. That's what the one Bene Gesserit says in the book when she shows up. She's like, nothing for the father, but I may be able to save the son. And it's like, wait. And Paul catches on. He's like, wait, what do you mean? Because they're talking about that traitor thing. And they literally say, oh, no, the father's going to die. There's nothing we can do for him. And Jessica just goes along. No, there's nothing we can do. But relax. You're saved, Paul. And it's like this whole, there's just so much political intrigue and stuff that's going on with behind the scenes and the suspecting of people and what people know and don't know and how they're trying to figure things out, which I think would go great in a TV show.
Right. Especially
done in the style of Game of Thrones. Exactly.
Because that's exactly what Game of Thrones had in its early seasons was so much political. You don't know who to trust, betrayal, left and right. And fighting, quarreling houses. That's right up HBO's alley.
And I just think they could do it well. There's so much material there too, because there's the history beforehand now that is all written out. They have books that focus just on Leto Atreides and his time on Caladan. So there's so much material to work with that the fact that they haven't made the TV show is just almost criminal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I mean, he did a well enough job that they're greenlighting a second movie.
Yeah.
I heard that he actually has plans for 3, which means he wants to adapt Dune Messiah as a third movie, from what I understand. Which is the second book. Which that would be good because it kind of completes Paul's story there. Okay. So it'd be
I haven't read the second book. I know it's a smaller book, so at some point I probably will try to read that, especially if it's being made into a movie, just so I can get into that. But yeah,
I mean, I've gone through the book. I've gone through the first book 3 times in the past year because of seeing the movie and then being like, wait, I'm forgetting what happened here. Let me go back and read it again. Mm-hmm. And then I've gone through Dune Messiah twice this past year just because trying to parse out what they're building in this movie. And I'm hoping that they do get to do all 3. It'd be interesting to see.
Yes.
But like I said, I'm probably not going to be satisfied until I get a TV show, series. Multiple seasons dealing with this.
That can really flesh
I do like
it
the
out.
Casting though. The casting was great. I thought it was fantastic. All the actors played their roles perfectly. I don't like it. There wasn't any point where I was like, I wish I would have gotten to see more. I wish I would have gotten to see just how demented some of them really are. There are some, like the casting in the next movie, I'm scared of because they have Christopher Walken is cast for the next movie as the Emperor. And I'm just looking at that being like, first of all, the Emperor is supposed to be this like 30, 40-year-old looking redheaded dude. And they got Christopher Walken playing that character.
Oh, de-aging, there's no limits.
There's the de-aging thing, but there's also the fact that I've never seen Christopher Walken play anybody other than Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
He doesn't, like, in my opinion, he doesn't act. He plays a role, and you bring him in to play that role. It's a great role. Yeah. It's not a bad thing. There's lots of actors who do that. I think Ryan Reynolds is another one who always plays pretty much the exact same character, but you bring him in because you want Ryan Reynolds,
Right.
Similar to, I mean, Will Smith has branched out, so he's not exactly like that, but he was for a while there. Mm-hmm. The Rock is another one who pretty much plays different versions of the same guy. Big departures for him were movies like The Tooth Fairy and stuff like that. very early on.
Right.
When you were like, oh, his career's going down, and then he goes in Fast Five, and oh, okay, we'll bring it back.
Yeah. And I mean, this movie, like we said, the technical elements, like there's an immense sense of scale. The production design is incredible. The sandworms, especially on the big screen, how large and gravity of them is just, you feel the weight of them almost in the theater. It's like they really, cinematography wise, they really did a good job capturing this. You feel like you're on the planet Arrakis, that you can feel the desert heat, and the sand. It's just, they really did well in those areas. Story wise, there are definitely some things. That's also what I had. My complaint was, having read the book, the lack of the political intrigue just isn't as strong here as what it is in the book. But still for me, still
and
really
it's similar to. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was all I was going to say there.
Well, I was thinking it's similar to like Lord of the Rings, where like Lord of the Rings, when you read those books, the books give you way more hope than the movies ever do. The movies make you think like everything is just terrible and they can't do anything. Whereas in the books, Legolas is killing Nazgul in the first book, so, so there's that. So it's similar to like Dune, where, you didn't get that by not getting that dinner scene. You don't know what else is going on the planet. You don't know that there's smugglers who steal things away from the planet, who are sneaking spice off in different ways, and that they're trying to make deals with these smugglers to get themselves out of there. You don't know that there's people who are shipping water in, and that they're trying to make connections with them too. Like there's all these different factions working together and vying for power, and it just like it was possible for certain things to go a certain way. But this movie just made it seem like there was just nothing. Liet Kynes is just sitting there being like, nothing I can do, nothing I can do, nothing I can do. She doesn't care.
Yeah. Which also, fun fact, anyone who's read the book, they switched her from a male in the book to a female in the movie. But I think we discussed this. They don't really have, wasn't really a problem for me. I don't know of anyone that really had a problem with that.
I thought they were trying to combine two characters and just make it easier on themselves, which I would have understood. But the fact that Kynes still met the same fate that Kynes met in the book, that it's like, I mean, different, but similar enough. So it's like, I don't know what they're trying to do there or why, but it didn't matter. The actress was great. I mean, she's still the mother of, probably, I'm assuming, the mother Cheney. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see what goes on. I'm curious to see if Timothée Chalamet will bulk up at all. Yeah,
he's really, that's on the rewatch. I was like, man, he is thinner than I remember him. And watching this movie the first time,
it's perfect for the kid, because the kid size, he's supposed to be small. You've kind of cut out. Did we lose Anthony?
I'm still here. Do you hear me?
Okay, cool. Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah.
What were you saying about Timothée Chalamet?
I was just saying, he looked when I was rewatching this 2 nights ago, it's like he looks even skinnier in this viewing than what he looked like when I saw this movie opening night. He is very gaunt looking almost in certain scenes. Like he's just
they even make fun of him for being so small. They're like, oh, it looks like you got a muscle. Really? No.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
I mean, they did do that part well too, because that actually doesn't come out in the book. Duncan Idaho, like I told you, as a character gets revived.
Right.
You see his love for the Atreides family in the books because of that aspect, but you don't see it so much in the book. So they got to portray that in the movies, like how much he actually loves this family and is how close he is with Paul and how meaningful his relationship. So they built on that really well, setting up for what happens later, even though we don't know if they're going to get a chance to show that type of stuff happening later. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, because that's all Dune Messiah and beyond.
Gotcha.
It's interesting what they do and how the technology works. Oh, that's the one big gripe that I did have with this movie when I was on the rewatch. The one big gripe I had was Yui's Asian accent.
Okay. All right.
Because he's got this really deep, like, accent, and we're 20,000 years removed from our timeline. Mm-hmm. It's literally 20,000 years in the future in this story, and he's still talking like he's just got off the boat from China. And I was just like, why did they make that choice?
I didn't think about that.
Days and times, like, I just don't get it, It's just kind of funny to me that they did that. And I didn't think anything of it when I first saw the movie, but watching this time, I was like, what just happened here?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point.
But yeah, so
well,
I think Dune is worth seeing. That's Dune.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I gave it an A in my original written review, like a 94%, so like a nice solid A. And then for our like recommended rating system that we came up with for this season, I would put it into the rewatchable category, so like just below a must see. Rewatchable meaning that given a high praise, we purposely watch it again. I think it's a very rewatchable movie, but I wouldn't quite put it into you absolutely need to see this movie. I don't think it's quite there.
So I would also give Dune a rewatchable because it is a movie that's enjoyable and worth multiple viewings to fully get the depth of what they're doing with the characters and stuff. I don't think I would give it 94 or an A. I'd probably be more of a B plus area just because of the things that I said before. So I'd probably give it more like an 89 score for myself.
Yeah.
But still definitely a quality movie. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah.
To quote Forrest Gump.